Hello, welcome back to the channel. And today I thought I might go a little bit political. Because in the UK, by the end of the year, there will be a general election. So an election can be called from any time between now and January 2025. So it's more likely going to be this year. And it's likely to be at the end of this year, or towards the end of this year, generally because the current ruling party in the UK, which is the Conservatives, has a 20-point deficit in the polling tables to Labour. It might even be more. It's been consistently that low for nearly a year now, I think. And this, so there is no incentive for Rishi Sunak to really call an election early. He wants to try and give himself as much time to try and turn things around as far as the economy and everything else is concerned. So he actually has something positive to campaign on. However, that deficit in the points is more than likely meaning that Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister of the UK. And he is a Labour MP and leader of the Labour Party. So there will be a change in overall policy, or will there, because it's difficult to, if you watch any of the political channels, it's quite difficult to separate conservatism from Labourism, where they meet in sort of the central, and they're again very, very similar in their policy stances, to the fact that the Conservatives have adopted some of Labour's policies in the recent budget, and also Labour seem to have said that they will keep some Conservative policies. So how much change there will be when a new Prime Minister comes in is yet to be seen. What is interesting though is that I live in Wales, and we've had a Labour-led Welsh Assembly, or Senedd, or Welsh Government, whatever you want to call it, since the formation of that in the early 2000s or late 1990s. So, in theory, we should be seeing what Labour's policies would be like and how they would run. And if you're watching political news, you'll see that Rishi Sunak points to the Welsh Labour's failure in things like the NHS, education, and a number of other issues, as an argument why not to vote for Labour in the upcoming general election. And the Welsh Labour government normally throws back it's because it's due to lack of funding from Westminster. So you get these sort of circular arguments going down. However, there doesn't seem to be any other sort of real political party that could rival either the Conservatives or Labour. Well, technically not even just rival Labour. I think the current polls are that the Conservatives are pretty much going to be wiped out in the next election, except in very strong heartland areas. So there are other parties, things like the Lib Dems. If you watch any of the mainstream news, they are pretty quiet. Haven't seen any sort of policy announcements from them. Greens could be interesting. There is a lot on the Green agenda, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about in this video. You also have these sort of more right-wing parties, such as Reform and Reclaim. Whether they get anywhere, who knows? They are sort of offshoots of UKIP. So it looks like Labour is going to be the party in charge. They have not really announced any of their policies, and have been pushed on multiple programmes on TV, on YouTube, and interviews and such. And they haven't released a manifesto. They have announced some policies and U-turned on them. So the big one, which I want to sort of think about, is the 28 billion pledge for renewable and green energy, which they've now rolled back on, their excuse being that the Conservatives have trashed the economy so badly that money is no longer available. Which it may or may not be. It's difficult to really know. It's hard to really cost what the Labour, or where Labour have got their costings for that 28 billion, and also where the economy will be in 9 months' time at the next election. Of course, this also makes that argument is sort of quite weak, that the economy's trashed the economy. The Tories have crashed the economy, therefore they can't keep to that pledge. It's a bit an odd one, because surely when they made that pledge they knew that the economy is very volatile at the moment, so how could they have made it in the first place? So who knows where that's going. But something that 28 billion is a lot of money. So the question is, if you have to roll back that funding, is there ways to improve green energy, improve energy security, without having to spend huge amounts of money? So I don't expect Keir Starmer or any Labour MP or politician to really watch this and take any notice of it, but it'd be nice if they did, and I'd be more than willing to just sort of chat to them about that sort of thing. But I'm also a fan of cycling, and back in the early 2010s, Team Sky came around and started dominating this professional cycling scene. Same happened with British cycling in the Olympics from the track sports, and the person in charge of that was Dave Brailsford, and he had this idea of marginal gains, where if you take all the different aspects and you improve everything by a small amount, you end up with a summation of those improvements, which actually can be quite significant. So I'm wondering if this is the same sort of approach that the Labour Party could take towards green energy to make an improvement, without having to spend a huge amount of money. Because you got, as part of a government, you have both social reforms, and you have law, and you have power of economics as well, so spending. So is there things we can do which would actually improve or reduce the amount of CO2 that, say, the country is putting out? So the first one that springs to mind is solar panels, because this also gives the house energy security, but also the people who live in houses with solar panels are therefore more energy independent, and therefore less susceptible to sudden changes on the energy market, such as happened at the beginning of the Ukraine war. So the first thing you could really do is that if you are a housing developer, you make it within the planning rules that houses should have a large south-facing roof, and that roof should be full of solar panels. So it'll add a small amount of cost to the price of the house, but house prices are going up so much anyway. What's an extra couple of £1,000 actually going to really do to that? Especially with the long-term benefits to the homeowner. It will pretty much pay itself back. But again, it won't cost the government anything, because you just have to stipulate that roofs should be south-facing, and there is already a rule, some planning laws that say you should be installing solar panels. But what the housing developers tend to do is go for the minimum, which is install something like 2, which is pretty pathetic. So again, just changing the wording of that to fill a roof with solar panels is sort of an obvious solution. We can also look at the actual cost to the firm building those. They'll probably be able to bulk buy solar panels to get them at a cheaper cost. The main cost of solar panels is the labour and the scaffolding. The scaffolding will already be up on a new build anyway, and you already employed an electrician and a roofer, so the extra costs are marginal. Keeping with the home idea, why not make a regulation that if you are building homes, you have to install some sort of battery system, even if it is very small. So when a homeowner moves in, they can choose to upgrade it. Also, that grid storage or home energy storage can be used for grid storage, with things like the Octopus Intelligent Flux, and more companies starting to look down that way. So again, that seems to be a very simple solution. Another issue that I've thought about was heat pumps. So I'm currently looking into heat pumps. So the government is currently offering a £7,500 grant for heat pump installation, and the uptake has been very low. There was an article in the BBC News either last week or the week before about the uptake, and saying how many they were hoping to install over a time period compared to how many there have been. Part of this is just the general cost of it. However, is there ways to actually improve the uptake of the heat pump technology? Well, first of all, the heat pump grant is only applicable to air to water or air to liquid heat pumps or ground source to liquid heat pumps. They've totally neglected air-to-air heat pumps, which are not only much cheaper, so again reducing the cost, but also can be very suitable in some people's homes, especially if you're just replacing a combi boiler or if you're replacing electric heating such as storage heaters, because you don't have to put a wet water system in and therefore rip the house apart, therefore reduce cost. So why not change the rules on that to allow air-to-air heat pumps as well. Looking at the Welsh Law, this is very interesting. So in England, if you're applying for a heat pump, you don't need planning permission, providing you install the heat pump a metre away from a boundary to your property. In Wales, it's 3 metres. So the Welsh Government, which has control over this, have kept these old rules, which are probably something to do with noise, but heat pumps have become more quiet, so they haven't kept up to date with this. So when the Labour Party is actually in power, they haven't bothered to do anything which is to improve green uptake. So this is why I'm saying it's a bit why Richie Sunak really does have Keir Starmer over the barrel at some points when using the Welsh Labour Party as an example of Labour rule. But if you think about it, if in Wales you need a 3 metre gap between a heat pump and a boundary, and a heat pump is roughly a metre in diameter, you need a 7 metre wide property. Wales has got lots of terraced houses, whose width is probably about 5 to 6 metres, so none of those terrace houses can have a heat pump. Even this house, which is a 1930s semi, and it's quite large, it's quite wide, only has 8 metres width, which means you really, and due to where the bay windows are, or not a bay window, sliding door window, means that it's impossible to actually find a place where it would be suitable to sit a heat pump to fit those rules. So I'd have to apply for planning permission, which seems absolutely ridiculous, especially since England does already have the law, and you can just say, right, we're just going to adapt this law and change it. Literally, you have to just delete the word letter 3 or the number 3 and replace it with 1. So again, no cost to the government, easy to do, might improve uptake. Small marginal gain, but over time might be quite substantial. Another thing is EVs. If you want to cut down on greenhouse emissions, especially at point of use, EVs are the way to go. But again, I've covered this on my channel a number of times. If you don't have a driveway, you can't charge at home. So what's the incentive to have an EV? And then take advantage of the lower energy prices you can get. Why not make it law that applications for things like the Turbo system or Charge On are automatically approved, and then the council has to reject them if they are not suitable. That again would be a really obvious change to make. And again, it'll make things much easier for people, because how many people are saying, I will get an EV, but I can't charge at home, so what's the point? And of course, that would come with the added benefit that people can take advantage of future vehicle-to-grid storage, or vehicle-to-grid use. So again, help balance the grid. And also can move on to cheap energy tariffs, such as, again, using Octopus as an example, the cheap overnight EV rates. So again, that would just benefit people. So again, why not do it? It's not going to cost you that much. There's also incentives for EVs. So next March or April in 2025, there will start being effectively a road tax on EVs. I think paying about £150 a year. Normally, when they bring in changes to road tax, it only applies from the vehicles registered after that date. But this is going to be backdated. So when I had my Hyundai i40 diesel, I had to pay £20 a year vehicle excise duty tax. Because the car was registered in 2015, which was a couple of years before the law changed and brought parity between diesel cars and petrol cars in terms of, I guess I could call it road tax. I know it's not, but I could call it road tax anyway. So with EVs. There's more EVs coming onto the second-hand market now. More people are able to afford them, so why not give them that incentive to buy it by effectively saving them £150 a year by not backdating it? Because at the moment you could buy a diesel from 2016 and pay less road tax, which is meant to be levied on pollution, compared to an EV. Again, it doesn't really make sense. So that will cost the government something. There's about 1 million EVs on the road, have been sold in the UK. Obviously not all of them are still in use, which means that you're going to lose about £150 million overall, or at most £150 million in tax in a year from that. But I'd say it's probably going to be less. So these are things that should really be looked at. There are other sort of ideas or things that make it easier for planning. So can you make it easier for grid connections? Can you make it easier for businesses to put up wind turbines or put solar panels on their roof? Are there tax incentives you can give there, or subsidies, or some form of tax relief? These are the things that should be really being considered. But what I think it should also be considered is that there needs to be joined up thinking. So again, using the Welsh Government as an example, they've come under a lot of criticism because they want to, because during our time in the EU, farmers got subsidies from the EU. Those subsidies are now passed into the control of the Welsh Government, and they wanted to now make these subsidies only if you use 10% of your land for growing trees and 10% of your land for something else, which is designed to reduce carbon emissions. So they're trying to reduce carbon, but they're not taking the obvious, easy effect. They wanted to affect farmers' incomes, and also the analysis from the Welsh Government showed that would result in 5,000 farmers losing their jobs, having that 20% reduction in land. So again, something we should really consider. So those are just some of my thoughts. So hopefully you found this video vaguely interesting and thought-provoking. Please mention below if you have any comments yourself, and if you are an MP, please comment as well and get in touch saying what you want to do about such things. Anyway, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in another video soon.